I was gonna get an icon pass this season, but then I got really into baking. I don't miss the mountain at all. I don't. Why would I? Just gotta fill that void.
Welcome everybody to Winter OR 2021 version. We're so glad to have you here. Today is the biannual outdoor retail and consumer trend presentation. Today we've got Matt Powell and myself, Julia Day. We're going to be going over the trends in the sports business and the outdoor business. First, let me tell you a little bit about NPD. NPD has an expertise in tracks retail and consumer sales in more than 20 industries. We do more than 12 million consumer surveys a year and millions of receipts from consumer transactions at retail. We also have this tracking in 19 countries. We do this to combine the data with our deep industry expertise as well as analytics to help clients grow their business. At NPD, we track a number of different industries, from sports to home to apparel, appliances, automotive, etc., office supplies. The reason I mention this is Matt's going to take you through really some overall retail tracking, and he's going to cover a lot of the sum of a lot of these industries. It's really going to help us understand what's happening overall at retail. Then he's going to dive deep into the sports business. And then I'm going to finish out with a deep dive into the core outdoor retail channels and retail sales. When we look at the sports business that NPD tracks, we track athletics and team sports, run and fitness, cycling, outdoor and snow. Today, we're going to cover the outdoor business, hiking, camping, climbing, paddle sports, outdoor recreation, backyard recreation. That's what we'll be covering today. And then I'm going to introduce the man that needs no introduction, Matt Powell. He's got almost 50 years in the retail industry and over 20 years as a sports industry analyst. This is a gentleman that normally would be traveling 300 plus days a year. He's been grounded, as we all are, but he has not stopped providing insights to companies, executives across the country and across the globe. So Matt, I will let you take it away and kind of dive deep, and then I'll come back and finish up with outdoor.
Great. Thank you, Julia. Thanks everybody for joining us today. So we're going to take a top line look at what's happened in the state of retail for the industries that NPD tracks. There's some really interesting learning there. I'm going to talk about some other macro issues, and then I'm going to take you a quick spin through the other sports categories that we track, and finally end up with my predictions for the year. So this is what we look like in dollars and units through the week of Christmas. This is all the industries that we're tracking here across the top: accessories, apparel, auto parts, beauty, and so forth. And you can see that we've been up and down versus a year ago, going back to the 10th of October. We picked that week because that was Amazon Prime week, and we think that really was the kickoff to holiday. But overall, for the 12 weeks reported here, we're looking at a 2% change in dollars and a 2% decline in unit sales. Clearly, the business was front-loaded this year. This is tech, appliance, and toys, and you can see that the big gains in the early days. Black Friday and Cyber Monday disappointed. The pre-Christmas weeks also disappointed, and then Christmas week was a nice lift, a couple of extra days of shopping there that really helped drive that business upwards. For Christmas week, these are some of the key categories that showed growth. Video games, PCs, fragrance is always a big seller at the end. TVs, sweatshirts, sleepwear, sports toys, games, video games, and fashion dolls. We asked our partner Civic Science, who did a survey on what people expect to do with the stimulus checks that went out. This is not the supplemental unemployment checks now, but the stimulus checks. And as we saw in the spring, much of that money did not get back into retail. 39% of people say they're going to use this check to pay down debt. Another 17% are going to save it. And 21% said they're going to purchase necessities with this money. These are the fastest growing categories we saw under COVID, the 12 weeks of COVID. Cameras for meetings like this, hand cleaners, obviously, PC headsets, food dehydrators, electric grills. Much of the products were for the home. And these are the categories that had the greatest declines. The dark navy bars are all apparel. And you can see this list is almost entirely apparel, where we saw the big declines coming from. And then this is a quick look at the industry for 12 weeks by industry. Again, total retail up 2%. Small appliances had a real nice gain, as did video games, office supplies, and tech, books and toys. Athletic footwear and outdoor footwear flat, beauty down, apparel and TVs down. We closed about 8,700 doors last year. This is a gross number of door closures, much less than the original predicted amount. But we expect that we will continue to see closures as we move into 21. This is a survey we did early in the COVID situation, where we asked in our checkout tracking what people did before COVID, what they intended to do during COVID, and what they expected to do afterward. And you can see the walking and running has really jumped up in expectations. Exercising at home took a big jump. We'll see that in the data. Bicycle riding and yoga, all showing increased activity post-COVID. This is another really interesting one and a very important one, I think, for the sports industry. Up until April of 2020, when we asked the question, how often do you exercise? The greatest number of people never exercised at all. That number switched out in April, and people who say they exercise several times a week is actually larger than those who never exercise. Again, I think this is very good for the outdoor and sports industry. Gym attendance is down. People are afraid to go to a gym, whether it's by income or by gender. I don't know that this is going to change anytime soon. And then finally, one of the biggest changes we've seen is shopping behavior online. We track this very closely in athletic footwear and activewear. In the month of April, 69% of all athletic shoes were sold online. In 2019, that number was about 30%, and this year it's probably going to settle out at about 40%. In activewear, the number was about 20% in 2019. We think this number settles out at about 30%, I'm sorry. We don't think we go back from this. We think that the consumer has learned new behaviors under COVID, and that they will continue to operate into those behaviors. So having an online presence today has never been more important for a retailer. And this is a really interesting one. This shows what happened after the stores started to open up. Even though we saw growth early on, as the stores started to open up, physical stores started to open up again, we still saw continued growth in online purchases of athletic footwear and activewear. And I think this is further proof that we don't unlearn these behaviors. So let me take you through quickly through the other categories that we track in sports. Athletic footwear, April was down 50%, the single worst month I've ever seen in the 20 plus years I've been doing research. June was up 27%, the single best month I've ever seen since I've been doing research on the industry. But overall, sales have been disappointing. Sales through November down 7%, units down 11%, average selling price up 5%. And the encouraging thing here is that average selling price increase. If we can begin to see some abatement of the loss in units, we ought to be able to leverage some nice growth. But overall, down 7% for the year. Activewear followed, excuse me, a similar pattern to footwear, although perhaps not as extreme. But again, overall numbers down 7%, units down 4, average selling prices down 3, mostly on mix is where we're seeing that big declines there. Team sports equipment. This category is really dominated by golf, and many states closed their golf courses in March and April, resulting in those big drops. But as soon as the golf courses started to open up again, we saw a huge lift to the business. Overall, up 13% for the first 11 months of the year. Units about flat, average selling prices up 12%. Again, golf driving most of that. Health and fitness, whole different line of trajectory here. As soon as the gym started to close in March, the home fitness business took off and has been just outstanding ever since. We're seeing up more than double many months here. Overall for the year so far, up 86%, up 50% in units, average selling prices up almost 24%. And again, I think as people are nervous about going back to the gym, and I think people looking for to continue to enhance their home experience, that we'll see these numbers continue to be solid. The cycling industry followed a very similar pattern to what we saw in home fitness. As the beginning of the lockdowns, this business took off and has stayed really solid, up 54% for the year so far. Units up 28, average selling prices up 20. And then finally, taking a look at what's happening in the outdoor industry. Again, a big drop off in the early months, some rebounding here, but overall continues to be challenged, down 7% for the year so far, down 12% in units, average selling prices up 6. Apparel down 12, and apparel is 51% of the volume. So that really hurts. And as we noted a couple of different places, the apparel business is tough, regardless of what category you look at. Equipment up 11, that's great. Julia is going to give you a deeper dive into what's happening there. Footwear down 6, although we did see in the second half of 20 some recovery in the hiking category, and we think hiking is going to be an important story as we move through 21. And then lastly, I want to return to something that we had talked about a couple of years ago, about how we really need to start to think about this industry in a different way. We've seen a whole lot of new people coming into the sports categories, whether it's cycling or home fitness or outdoors. And we really need, I think, to have a different mindset about how we attack this part of the industry, to make sure we're focused on the right things. One of the things I believe we're going to see is a renewed interest in living healthy lifestyles. When you look at the casualties of the pandemic, many of those people had pre-existing conditions, overweight, smokers, diabetic, etc. And I think that people are going to be far more focused now on living healthy lifestyles than they were. So this is very good for the whole sports industry. I think social distancing will remain important even as we get the vaccine out there. I think people are going to be reluctant to go to crowded spaces. I think they're going to want to be outside and enjoying their interactions, but from a distance point of view. I think consumers see being outside safer than being inside. Again, I think this bodes well for our industry. I think people want to align with the youth purpose out there. I think sustainability remains very important story here. I think consumers want to know the brands and retailers' values and purpose. And as we express that, I think we will see that they align with us here. I think it's also really important that that we act on those principles and carry that into everything that we're doing. Backyard living is going to become more and more important. People see it as an extension of their home. Again, they see it as a safer place to be. I think people are entertaining outside when they might not be entertaining inside. And so there's a whole range of products here that we should be thinking about that we could be selling that relate to backyard living. And then finally, and I said this earlier, but I think we really want to remember that many of these consumers who are coming in are not the pinnacle consumers that this industry is typically focused on. These are folks who are new to the activities. They may not know what things to buy. We want to be very careful that we don't oversell them, that we sell them products that they are above their capabilities or needs. I think that will only result in a disappointing experience on the part of the consumer. So we've talked in the past about really embracing this entry-level consumer, this family consumer. I think that has never been more important. So we need to really have a new thought process about our industry and who our customers are. I'm going to finish up with my predictions for the year, and then I'm going to pass it back to Julia for a deeper dive into the outdoor side. First of all, I think consumers are going to be slow to return to malls. I think the consumers are telling us that they're nervous about being in crowded places and close proximity to other people. Even after the vaccine is out there, I think that this will remain. This is good news for freestanding stores. I think they benefit from this concern. Sorry. We think e-commerce continues to reset at a new higher level. The illustration I had in athletic footwear and activewear, I think every industry is going to see e-commerce resetting at a new higher level. It's never been more important for a retailer today, any retailer, to have a strong e-commerce presence. I think that we really need to focus on this as we go forward. I think, as I said earlier, there's going to be a commitment to healthy lifestyle. I think this is really good for the sports industry. I think the more we can talk about this, the more we can support this, the better it's going to be for our businesses. I don't think the stimulus checks help much, as illustrated by that civic science slide. If we do see any results, it'll be one-off and early, and I don't think that there will be any lasting effect there. I think the sales trends for the year are going to be very lumpy. We're going to have some months that will be very easy to make, and some months it'll be very challenging. We really are advising that our retailers and brands benchmark themselves against 19, not against 20. Actually, we're going to be adding a capability to our reporting structure that will allow us to look at 2 years ago, which I think will help in planning and analysis as we go forward. But it's going to be a lumpy year. Some of the categories where we saw skyrocketing sales trends are not going to be able to offset those. And in some cases, footwear and apparel, it should be very easy to offset. I expect to see sports footwear up low single digits, above 20 level, but not above 19. I don't think we return to 19 sales levels until 22. Activewear really follows a similar sales trend. I don't think we're going to see activewear return to 19 levels for another couple of years. I think the home fitness business stays really good as people continue to avoid gyms. Cycling, golf, and some team sports are the bright spots. I think we can continue to see growth there. Overall, I think that's going to be a fair year for sports retail. So thank you very much again for attending, and I'm going to hand this back off to Julia to take a deeper dive. Thanks, and stay safe.
Thank you so much for those insights, Matt. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick look and a deep dive into the core outdoor business. But first, kind of to recap what Matt talked about, we look at the sports business. This is really kind of the excitement for 2020. We looked at, American consumers buying home fitness equipment, buying bikes like crazy, golf, tennis, stand-up paddle boards, camping, outdoor recreation. When we look at this, what we pulled for you was a really interesting view across the entire sports landscape. And these are the top 20 growing categories. This is actual change in dollar volume. So $575 million change in basketball-inspired footwear. So that's really, back in March when everyone started getting the stimulus checks. So we saw like a huge investment in that category. But then we could go down and we look at front suspension bikes, e-bikes, full suspension bikes. So front suspension and full suspension for those that aren't cyclists are mountain bikes. Then we look at sweatshirts, golf balls, treadmills. We look at underwear. We look at helmets, sweatpants, spin bikes, golf sets, basketball hoops and systems for those who really want to get out of the house and but still on their property and distance. Road bikes, dumbbells, cyclocross gravel bikes. And then we looked at different golf sets. So those are the top performing categories in 2020. Let's look at the bottom, and this is across the entire sports landscape. So we look at, and this is coded. So footwear and apparel are the different shades of blue. So what we can do without even looking, there's no equipment in these bottom categories. It's jackets, it's footwear. So the dark blue, when you see basketball, that's hardcore basketball shoes, socks, skate shoes, etc., road running shoes. So we look at these and we see these declines in the footwear and apparel categories. And then taking a look at another perspective are the top growing brands. So we look at this and we look at how strong the bike business has been. We see Specialized in Trek. Again, these in dollar volume change in 2020. Golf, Callaway. Sweats and casual wear, Hanes. Nordic Track, we see that in the fitness equipment. So you can go down there and look at, really those brands that have seen incredible change in 2020. Then we kind of take it down a notch. We're kind of getting into the outdoor business here and looking at specialty store sales. So what we're looking at is the IBD, the bike specialty, sales up 48%. They really had very little closure, deemed essential stores during the pandemic. We look at outdoor specialty, and what I've done is I've combined the outdoor specialty and outdoor specialty e-com. We'll break those two apart and we'll look at them together. Looking at them together because we know consumer behavior changed, especially during the pandemic and in the height of the closures in March and April. Those stores were closed. So we can see the consumers moved online, and we'll look at that a little bit later. But those two combined down 7%, and snow and combining the two together down 7% as well. So really, when we look at this and we look at the pandemic reality and how does that affect the outdoor, we know that there was a period of time that stores were closed, have been closed due to COVID, March, majority of March, April, and some into May. So we're going to kind of pick apart where consumers shifted. They're still purchasing from specialty stores and sporting goods stores. They're just buying online or buying online and picking up in store. So really, we look at this complete disruption kind of paired with consumers, us as American consumers saying, I want to be outdoors. I'm going to social distance. So the outdoors, as Matt showed us, is a safe place to be and a place that really kind of recharges us. And then how can we be outdoors and do that with our family? Which are the units that we can see. And then really that values the sustainability, the taking a stand that hasn't gone away, as Matt showed us a little bit earlier. But really, what is that the big kind of mountain decline that the outdoor industry has faced, and how did the outdoor industry fare? So really drilling it down to the core outdoor industry. So this is looking at outdoor specialty stores, e-com part of their business. So really looking at that together or separately, and then the sporting goods stores as well. So that's really the core of the outdoor business. It's a $20.4 billion business, and sales overall in 2020 overall were down 5%. So we look at this and we say, okay, how can we pick this apart? Athletic specialty and sporting goods, where we're seeing brick and mortar and e-commerce combined together, down almost 4%. And we look at outdoor specialty and outdoor specialty e-commerce. So we look at the brick and mortar being overall down 26%, but e-commerce being up 23%. That gives us a net 7.7% decline in the core outdoor market. And really, where did that come from when we look at that? So we look at this. This is a great chart that's going to show you this core outdoor business, and it's going to show you by month. So we're looking starting in January and really kind of visualizing this through September. So you can see when stores were closed, and you can see those declines there, really across the board: footwear, equipment, apparel, and accessories. We can see, though, equipment is kind of lifting up there. When we go into June and July, when stores were back open, we start to see all those sales lift, but we just see that equipment just take off. So we're going to really spend a lot of time. I kind of call it 2020 as the year of equipment. Forget experiences, just give us the product so we can go outside and do something, because we're like going out of our minds, right? Being at home. So you can see that lift, and you can see as that follows throughout the year. Now, when we look at this and we really look at how did we as consumers, Matt showed us how online really became much more important as a purchase channel. I mean, for obvious reasons, right? Either the store's closed, we can't go in, it's limited, but we're still shopping at those favorite stores. So our outdoor specialty stores, we shifted to online, and a lot of that is online. I know, especially when I look at my local fly shops, as many of you know, I'm a fly fisherman. And so a lot of it was purchase online and then pick up at the store, like drive by, they'll come out, or sometimes they even drove over to my house. So we see that huge shift, and we see that as that shift kind of pivoted back to in-store and then out. This is a really telling chart that shows that shift in our behavior of purchases. So when we look at this almost $21 billion core outdoor industry across, again, the outdoor specialty and the sporting goods retailers, how does that really fall? And Matt showed a lot of this: apparel, footwear, equipment, and accessories. So this is the one time where we're looking at, normally we're talking about apparel. Apparel's driving growth. Apparel is really driving that decline. In equipment, we're looking at a double-digit growth. In apparel, we're looking at a 9% decline there. Then we're looking at the shifts in volume. So really, where apparel has traditionally been 60% of the business, we're now looking at it 54% of the business. So we're starting to see that shift. Equipment has gone from 18% of the business to 24% of the business. And if we really want to kind of sum up today's outdoor lifestyle, really it's like sweats. If we're summing it up, it's sweats. It's just looking like we're like a microcosm of the total sports business. We're looking at sweats, we're looking at sports bras, as a lot of people shifted to running, etc., being comfortable. Footwear, we're looking in this is in the core outdoor business, these core outdoor specialty and sporting goods stores. We're looking at comfort shoes. We're looking at comfort boots, slippers, and then we're looking at that kind of rise in performance running and trail running as gyms close, and we look for different options. Under equipment in the outdoor business, we're looking at tents, tools, kayaks, sleeping bags. We'll look through all of that. We'll dig a little bit deeper. So it's really like equipment. And then one thing that popped up is if it's got to do with kids, whether it's kids carriers, etc., we're seeing a rise in those sales. Now, this is taking this entire outdoor business. This is taking the largest categories showing growth. So we take the largest categories in dollar volume, sort that. So we're looking at from largest to smallest in dollar volume. But then we take the categories that are showing growth. So when we look at this again is very telling. We're looking at men's sweatshirts, women's sweatshirts, kayaks, active shorts, sweatpants, camp chairs, hard-sided coolers, women's sports bras, men's jeans. So we're really looking at that kind of sum of, look, I want to be comfortable, but I'm also going to get out and I want to do these activities. So we're seeing this predominantly here show up. Outdoor accessories and equipment. So I really call this the year of equipment. I'm not going to go into a lot of this in detail, and you're seeing a lot of numbers, but this is looking at that exact same thing. This is taking the largest categories by dollar volume, descending, and then looking at the growth within these categories. So we're not showing you the declining categories. We're showing you the growing categories, and you're going to see. I'm going to flip a number of different pages of this because this is the top 40 right here. And so if we look at the top 40, how is that characterized? Rec kayaks, camp chairs, hard-sided coolers, binoculars, sleeping bags, soft-sided coolers, 3-season backpacking tents. So really you can start to see the patterns that we as American consumers really followed as we're saying, what are we going to do? How are we going to get out of the house? How are we going to enjoy the outdoors? Are we going to enjoy it in our backyards with tents? I did a little bit of that myself. Are we going to start grilling? Are we going to increase our grilling? Are we going to experiment and learn how to make different things on the grills? We did that. Are we going to recreate close to home and road trip? So you start looking through these categories. Dehydrated food, portable power, water filters, camp hammocks. So we start looking at this. And again, these are the top 40 equipment subclasses by dollar volume showing growth. I mean, some of these are showing huge double-digit growths here. This is the next 40. We start looking at this. So we've just gone through the top 40. We're looking at another 40 here. So water jugs, cookware, stoves, water sports racks. So as we bought canoes and canoes, kayaks, stand-up paddle boards, we need the racks to carry them with. Again, you start to see that theme in grilling. You start to see the backcountry. So how can we recreate when the ski areas are closed? We see this huge growth in skins and beacons. We look at first aid kits. We look at radio. So how do we get off-road and into the backcountry? So these are, again, we looked at the top 40. These are the next 40. And we've got more. So it's really, when I say it's the year of equipment and growth in equipment, here we are like stand-up paddles. So those are the paddles that you've got to paddle your stand-up paddleboard with, up 44%. We look at cross country and backcountry. Again, we look at Nordic. We see double-digit growth there. We look at a 9% growth in avalanche shovels. And again, COVID hit late. When we all, I think I've been at home since March 5th or March 7th. So again, as these have developed, we start to see as what we did. Joggers. So if you got kids, you want to take your baby out while you go jogging, we start to see that growth. And then here we're looking kind of even more. So we looked at the top 40, the next 40, the next 40, and now this is kind of the tail end here, but these are more equipment subclass segments that we're growing, down to cargo bags, phone cases for the outdoors, etc. So really, how do we make sense of this? If I were going to kind of make sense of it, we look at the outdoor gourmet, so grilling, outdoor comfort, how can I be comfortable? Paddle sports, again, close to home recreation, keeping cool, overlanding, how can we get away from it all? Really that self-contained camping that we, the rise in RV sales has been well documented, really becomes that self-contained travel camping, and even in some ways, as much as we can, glamping during a pandemic. Back in side country, that category has been growing for the past few snow seasons. We really saw it explode as the ski resorts closed. Viewing. So how can we go wildlife viewing? How can we start to look at the mountains, look at the outdoors? So we saw this rise in like binoculars and optics. Powering up. How do we stay powered up? Kids products, and then cycling, which we track that under the cycling industry, not under outdoor, but we're looking at just that explosion. Like e-bikes themselves grew 145% last year in dollars sold, but 132 in units sold. So that's not just buying an expensive product that the price point's gone up. It's huge, just an explosion in wanting to get outdoors. We're still looking at those big categories when I showed you mountain biking, etc. Mountain bike sales are up like 70+% this year. So kind of like, again, kind of wrapping up the equipment, looking at all these images that I'm showing you here on the screen, these are the actual products. So this is like the #1 product in the category there. So we're looking at the top sellers across different categories. So camp chairs, stand-up paddle boards, kayaks, backpack tents, really 3-season backpack tents. We saw an explosion in that. Hard-sided coolers, a category that, exploded once June came around. Once that heat came, all retailers were open. We saw that category explode. Dehydrated food, as we either got way away or prepped for being away or for the pandemic. Look at optics, binoculars up 11%. Hydration, we saw the bottles and thermal insulated, that really dropped as we became locked up at home. But wearable hydration, as we wanted to get out onto the trail on our bikes and outdoor recreation, we saw wearable hydration grow. Hitch racks. So as we bought bikes, as we we saw car racks explode, but hitch racks in particular really kind of followed that explosion in us buying bikes. Grills, almost anything to do with grilling or outdoor cooking exploded this past year. So I thought I would give you kind of a little bit of a humorous picture. This is one of my very good friends said, "I think I need a hitch rack," and she texted me this picture here. So what really triggers that purchase? She and one of her best friends made, they both purchased, weren't sporty, weren't outdoor people, purchased e-bikes in the pandemic, and to keep up with their I hate to say this, but to keep up with their boyfriends, and now who are hardcore mountain bikers, and now they're more hardcore. They literally go every single day, and they've decided that maybe they need to invest in a hitch rack there. So a little outdoor humor. Looking at outdoor apparel, which is less humorous, unfortunately. As we went home, kind of, went inside, we also didn't need to buy clothes. We're not traveling, we're not seeing other people. So really those purchases fell off. Where we do have the bright spots, shorts, sweatshirts, really short sweatshirts, sport bras. And so what I thought I'd do is I thought I'd give you some visual images here. So if you look at the top images, that is those are the top selling products within all 3 channels. So the sum of sporting goods, outdoor specialty, and outdoor specialty online. The bottom are the top sellers in outdoor specialty. So what's interesting here are what's the same across both channels and what's different. So when we look at shorts and we look at, in sporting goods, we expect the Nike running short to be the top seller. So when we look in outdoor specialty, we see it's a Patagonia short that's the top seller. So you can look through and see the differences, but you can also see those similarities. In sporting goods, you have a Nike sweatshirt that's the #1 seller, and you've got a Patagonia that's the #1 seller in outdoor specialty. And in some cases, the exact same jean, the Prana Bridger jean with an average selling price of $72 is #1 seller across both channels. So looking at outdoor footwear, this really follows, as Matt showed, like the greater trends in footwear. We look at running and trail running. Now, again, the image on your left-hand side is going to be the top seller in sporting goods stores, and the image on your right-hand side is the top seller in outdoor specialty stores. So when you look at this and we see running, trail running, where performance running has been lagging the past few years, really resurged. Even again, it's still down because it's a large category that really suffered from the store closures and us buying less footwear. But we look at this down to 3.5% off a $1.7 billion market in these core channels. Really shows you that people turned around and started running, and when they couldn't go to gyms. Hunting, fishing. So hunting, fishing is a category that both those categories went way up as we as consumers looked for things to do this year. And so this really gives you what's happening in across all the channels versus the specialty stores. The same thing in fashion shoes. I've showed you the image because fashion shoes within the core outdoor business isn't what we think of as fashion shoes. If we're looking, it's not high heel shoes, right? It's Crocs. It's looking at the fashion boots. When we look at the Sorel Madison mock at $148, that's the average selling price in specialty stores. So again, look at that fashion boots. You've got a Timberland boot, then you've got the Sorel Madison mock. That's the #1 in specialty stores. In specialty stores, the average selling price is $148 versus the $98 across all the channels. So when we look at even going up to the running and trail running shoes, the on running shoe that you see on the right hand side, that ASP is $104 versus the $78 across when you include in sporting goods. We look at slippers. What does slippers mean in the core outdoor business? Very different than the fuzzy slipper we might get if we went to a department store. Hiking boots, again, you start to see that difference, and there's a big difference in the average selling price between the two channels. So looking at this is top sellers in outdoor specialty stores. These are, what's interesting about these is they're not really changed from what we looked at over the past year. So when we look at this, we're seeing Sorel, but we're seeing a different type of cold weather boot. We're seeing fashion sandals again in the core outdoor business. Fashion sandals has a much different meaning. You're seeing those declines though, as we didn't travel, as we didn't go to school, or as kids didn't go back to school or college and stayed home. So we're starting to, we saw these categories decline significantly in double digits, but the top sellers really held steady there. So kind of to sum up what we looked at and make sense of all these retail sales, we're seeing double-digit growth, we're seeing double-digit declines, and we're really seeing it follow as we as consumers changed our behaviors. So, we could call it a Christian Science Monitor, summed it up, the year of the road trip. These two images, this is a friend who took her 16-year-old daughter, said she can work from school, and they went across the country. They had to cut it short because there were certain states that they couldn't go into because of quarantine, but it was really learning on the road. So, whether you've changed your venue, whether you've gone somewhere, but we have a lot of friends that came here for 3 months or went to California for 3 months, that type of thing. But it's really that working at home let us change our venue. And a lot of people became highly mobile. Overlanding, has never been stronger. What a perfect time for a growing category. How can we get as far away from it all as humanly possible, which I think all of us did a little bit of that. So here's some favorite overlanders of mine who, found a perfect way to social distance during this pandemic. A lot of us found time to look at new family activities. So whether it was fishing, whether it was mountain biking, whatever those activities were, are there different ways to stay self-contained, and not just the traditional kind of camping. We saw that growth. And then that close to home. So how can we stay cool? How can we enjoy the outdoors? How can we recreate, and by staying close to home? And we saw that huge rise in paddle sport sales. We saw the whole backyard adventure in those family connections. So even within the family and close families, we found that the best way to kind of connect and recreate is and exchange, communications with our family members was outside around a fire. So we did a lot of social distancing fires. And then how many of us all, again, have learned to grill or learned to perfect the brisket on the grill or adopted a new pet? And then really, finally, to kind of end with bike, and if you're interested in learning more about what's happening in the bike industry, we are doing a webinar next week. So there'll be my contact information at the end of this. Reach out to me and I'll send you a link to the cycling webinar if you want to learn what's happening. You're looking at an e-bike here. I think I mentioned a story where, a friend decided to keep up, and then became more of a hardcore cyclist and mountain. Well, now she's got to graduate from kind of a trail bike to a much harder core mountain bike. So it's a great way to, as we look at this and we see that 144% increase in e-bike sales, we look at, it was a great way for families to connect and keep, you take someone that's hardcore and someone that's not, they can keep up with each other by getting an e-bike, and also a great way to introduce new consumers to the sport. So people that hadn't gone cycling before are now avid enthusiasts. So if we look at this, it's been challenging would be, I guess, the nicest word we could say about 2020. But there was a lot of bright spots, and especially consumers saying, I need to get the products in my hand so that I can get outside and enjoy and recreate and get some relief from being locked up in the house. So everybody had to pivot this past year. You all are masters at pivoting. So what I thought I would do is I thought I'd end this webinar with just giving you a thought. So as you're thinking, what's the crazy idea? How can I pivot in my business, whether my business is a retail store or I'm a brand and I'm making product, or I'm looking at new product to make. So I kind of hung this on my wall during the pandemic. Next time you're afraid to share ideas, remember someone once said in a meeting, let's make a film with a tornado full of sharks. So think of that every time you're like, what am I going to do? It's a crazy idea. What if it's going to, what if it doesn't fly? This is what I hold over my desk every day. So as we've kind of covered a lot of information today, Matt took us through the entire retail landscape, the sports business, and then we really drilled into outdoor. If you do want more information, so you want to see which products are selling, brand share, dive deeper into certain categories and segments, whether you're a brand or a retailer, please reach out. If you'd also like to receive, we have what we call the trend sheet. The trend sheet we have for outdoor. We also have for snow. And so with those trend sheets, please reach out to get that. It's going to summarize what you've just seen in this webinar. You can, and retailers, reach out to Ed Ray. If you're a retailer and you're not reporting to us, reach out to Ed and say, how can I start working with NPD. And if you are, again, reach out to Ed for the trend sheets, access to the cycling webinar next week. Laura Hills did a snow webinar with SIA, I believe 2 days ago. So reach out, we can give you those links, and we're more than happy to kind of talk through these trends with you. A big thank you to Matt Powell for enlightening us on what's happening, and a thank you to Outdoor Retailer and to SIA for letting us enlighten you on what's happening at retail. Thank you very much.
Would I normally get the Icon Pass? Sure. But with all that Gertrude's got going on, planning her wedding and whatnot, there's just no time. Do I regret not getting the Icon Pass? Yeah, right.
Yeah, you do. You're cooped up here, losing your mind.
That's not true.